The same catastrophe. Mars once had water, vegetation, and an atmosphere, which could have supported life as we know it. The gathering evidence is that Mars was destroyed in the same catastrophe which, on Earth, brought an end to that golden age. The early Sumerian astronomical accounts did not include Venus, but the later Chaldeans did so. They described it as a bright torch in heaven that illuminates like the sun and fills the entire heavens. As Velikovsky wrote, traditions about upheavals and catastrophes found among all peoples are generally discredited because of the short sighted belief that no forces could have shaped the world in the past that are not at work also at the present time. A belief that is the very foundation of modern geology and evolution. Mars in relation to Atlantis. Brian Desborough is no new age flyaway sitting in the clouds. He is a feet on the ground, give me the evidence researcher and writer. In the 1960s, he worked at the aircraft giant Boeing, and he says that a group of Boeing physicists got together to launch a private study aimed at explaining the many anomalies of the Earth that could not be explained by normal physics. What they concluded was to present staggering support for Velikovsky. Although they differed on timescale by about 3,000 years, they said that around 5000 BC, Jupiter careered through the solar system. I saw some interesting channeled information about Mars in relation to Atlantis. It said that one of the three Atlantean cataclysms around 10,500 BC was caused by a close pass of the Earth by Mars. The or Anunnaki. James Churchward has a more earthly explanation for the cataclysms. He says there are enormous gas belts and chambers under the earth, and when these blow, the land above is destroyed. He says these gas belts ran under both Lemuria Mu and Atlantis. What caused the cataclysms is open to debate. A similar theme can be found in the tens of thousands of ancient clay tablets discovered in Mesopotamia in the mid 19th century. Sumer dates from around 4000 BC, but civilizations existed in that region for tens of thousands of years before Sumer emerged. Central to these Sumerian accounts were the gods the Sumerians called the Anunna, the sons of An. Their later Semitic names were Anunnaki and Dingar, a reptilian race from the stars. How the Golden Age ended. The ancient legends and myths of how the Golden Age ended are confirmed by the geological environmental effects of this walkabout by Venus. Most important in relation to our story, these conclusions by people like Velikovsky, the Boeing physicists, and increasing numbers of other researchers today bring the time scale for the end of life on Mars to within the period that saw the end of Atlantis and Lemuria Mu. Brian Desborough suggests that the Golden Age was the result of many extraterrestrial and other dimensional races visiting the Earth and operating openly among the human population in a long period of at least hundreds of thousands of years. He believes the Earth was much closer to the Sun before these events and that Mars orbited in the area the Earth now resides. The Earth once followed the present orbit of Venus and that Mars was located in the present Earth orbit. Underground cities of Cappadocia. The Sumerian tablets describe how the Anunnaki gods left the planet to escape the devastation, even indicating that they had caused it. The only ones to survive the catastrophe were the extraterrestrials with the technology and foresight, perhaps prior warning, who left before the stuff hit the fan, and the people who sheltered deep underground or in the mountain ranges above the flood water, which could have reached heights of 10,000 feet. The Earth is riddled with tunnels and caverns, natural and created, which date back into far ancient times. Many of these have been located. 36 underground cities have been discovered in Cappadocia, huge complexes going down 8 levels. The ventilation systems are so efficient that the air is still fresh. Mount Ararat, Noah's Ark. A study by the botanist Nikolai Ivanovich Vavilov revealed that the 50,000 wild plants he examined from around the world originated in only 8 areas, all of them mountainous. In James Churchward's view, this would have been because the mountains were formed during the cataclysms and therefore many lowland areas were raised to a great height. According to ancient accounts, when the earth had settled down after the cataclysms, the survivors began to return from the high mountains north of Sumer in Turkey and Iran into the plains of Mesopotamia. It was on Mount Ararat that the symbolic Noah's Ark came to rest when the waters receded. The Sumerian tablets also relate how the Anunnaki gods returned to rebuild Sumer. Great structures of the Golden Age. Some researchers suggest that remains of the Anunnaki's pre-flood cities can be found today under the Persian Gulf, which became much wider and deeper after the upheavals. Depending on the location and the effects of the devastation, some of the great structures of the Golden Age survive and can be seen to this day. These could be anything from tens to hundreds of thousands of years old. Other famous sites and structures were built or rebuilt by the Sumerians from around 6,000 years ago. Stonehenge and Avebury were among the latter, but not necessarily the pyramids of the Giza Plateau and the breathtaking structures of South America. Egypt and Sumer advanced knowledge. If we knew that there had been a highly developed technological society thousands of years ago, which came to an end with fantastic geological upheavals. Again, does David Icke know what fantastic actually means? But anyway, wouldn't be my choice of words. We would see the world in a very different light. We would ask who those people were. Where did they come from? Where did they get their knowledge and technology? Suddenly, the mysteries of Egypt and Sumer and the staggering structures left us by the ancients would be far less mysterious. And if Egypt and Sumer were founded with the same advanced knowledge, it means that some of those pre cataclysmic peoples must have survived. So, what has happened to their knowledge for thousands of years, and what happened to their bloodlines? Understanding the connection. The ancient legends and accounts say that the highly advanced cultures of Atlantis and Lemuria were inspired by the knowledge brought by extraterrestrial races. Creation consists of infinite dimensions of life vibrating at different speeds. Think of the frequencies of the countless radio and television stations broadcasting to your area now. Their frequency range we can see, I will call the third dimension. At the moment, we are tuned to this frequency, the range of our physical senses, and so we can see it and touch it. Understanding the connection between the Nordics, the reptilians, and the Greys is to understand so much about the world today. These two races have been at war in many parts of the galaxy. The Dragonlands. It's a mana. Yeah. This fusion implanted a reptilian genetic code into the DNA, and these are the bloodlines that have ruled the world for thousands of years. A fundamental theme running from the golden age of Atlantis and Lemuria Mu to the present day is that of the snake or serpent. Both civilizations were known in legends as the Dragonlands. The Greeks called Atlantis Hespera, a name for Venus. Also, Lou Baldwin said that Venus was the planet of the serpents, and they said it was guarded by a dragon. Native American records call Atlantis Itzamana, which means Dragonland or the Old Red Land. The Algonquins use the name Pan for the Atlantean continent. Pan was originally a dragon or goat god of the Atlanteans. An Indian Tamil text, Silpa I don't know how you say this, Silpadikaran, sorry if I'm butchering it, describes a lost continent in the Pacific and Indian Ocean it calls Kumari Nadu, the dragon land of the immortal serpents. legends claim that a race came to the Earth from Sirius. Beings from Sirius. The legends and accounts say that the beings from Sirius brought an infusion of highly advanced knowledge to Atlantis and Lemuria Mu. According to Robert Temple in the Sirius Mystery, the Dogon tribe in Mali, Africa, claim that beings from Sirius visited their ancestors and gave them knowledge of the universe. He says that they describe the Syrians as amphibious and serpent-featured. Temple suggests that the Anunnaki of the Sumerian tablets could be these beings from Sirius. The Egyptians certainly depicted their lion bodies very differently to that of the Sphinx. Their dog symbol was a code for Sirius. The Sirius system was symbolized as feminine. Cherokee and Mayan records in North and Central America and the Greek historians Apollodorus and Diodorus claim the Pleiadians were involved in Atlantis and mated with humans to seed a large race of people, the Dogon people. Sirius is connected with the color red because it looks red when it appears over the horizon. Red is the color used for Sirius in ritual and symbolism. For a long period of its existence, the Sphinx was colored red. It was an obvious conclusion that this could relate symbolically to Mars, the red planet, but in the face of the other evidence, Sirius is perhaps more likely. The Queen's shaft in the Great Pyramid was designed to point to Sirius. The Sirius system is also depicted as a serpent in the Louvre Museum in Paris. Temple's research began when he heard that the Dogon people in Mali had told French researchers in 1931 some remarkable information about the Sirius system. Twin symbolism. The Dogon are claimed to have said that it took about 50 years to orbit Sirius A and that it was infinitely tiny. We know now, we now know even, this is true. Sirius B is a dwarf star and fantastically heavy. Again, his use of that word fantastic. Anyway, is it just different down in England? The story goes that they said there was a third star which orbits Sirius A and takes 50 years to complete a circuit. Its existence was confirmed by astronomers in 1995 and it is known as Sirius C to these three stars of the Sirius system. The constant reference to the number 50 in ancient myth could relate to these 50-year orbits. Sirius B and C as the twins using their combined orbit periods of 100 years as a code. Certainly, there is endless reference to twin symbolism throughout the ancient world. The Dogon call Sirius B Digitaria and Sirius C Sorgun, or the female star. The eyes of the Sphinx. A focus on Sirius can be found at the heart of most ancient societies. The heat in the summer months was known as the dog days. The number 23 was important to the Dogons, as it was to the Egyptians and the Babylonians. Some researchers say this was connected to the heliacal rising on July 23rd when Sirius, the Earth, and the Sun are in a straight line. Others speculate that this could create a stargate connection between the two systems, a sort of portal. This moment was the beginning of the calendar in many cultures. Yeah, why is it not still? It would make a lot more sense than our current calendar, but anyway. It is said that the eyes of the Sphinx line up with the exact period on the horizon where Sirius rises on July 23rd, and that the pyramids lined up to that point on the horizon. The ancients designed massive temples to point directly at the spot where Sirius appeared at the rising. The Star of the Wolf. Credo Mutwa, the Zulu shaman, says they call Sirius the Star of the Wolf, and their ancient accounts say that the sea-dwelling fish people from Sirius came to the earth. They also speak of a gigantic war on Sirius in which the fish people drove out humans. The Zulus knew Sirius B as the pit star, Credo Root in his book, or wrote in his book, Song of the Stars, not only among the Zulu, but the Dogon and many widespread African tribes, there are stories of the Nomo, who resemble the king of the water people. They are said to be intelligent beings who have visited the earth several times. I have heard them described as a cross between a demon and a dolphin. By the way, if you get the chance to look up David Icke's interviews with Credo Mutwa, very interesting. Worshippers of the sun. The translations of the Sumerian tablets by Zachariah Sitchin claim that the Anunnaki came from a planet called Nibiru, which has a vast elliptical orbit that takes it way out beyond Pluto and back between Mars and Jupiter every 3,600 years. There is a fundamental connection between the reptilian Anunnaki of the Sumerian tablets and Sirius Orion. Researcher Mark Amaru Pinkham says the symbol of the Syrians in Atlantis was a triangle, sometimes with an eye in the middle. The three-pronged trident was the fleur de lis. The key Atlantean god was Votan. Well, we'll get to him. The American organization, the Lemurian Fellowship, says that an extraterrestrial race from Venus, the Kumaras, were the leaders of the Lemurian civilization. The Lemurian initiated were worshippers of the sun, but was it our sun or was it Sirius, the brightest star in the sky? My money would be on Sirius. One of Lemuria's names apparently was Empire of the Sun. Royal bloodlines seeded everywhere. Atlantis and Lemuria existed for hundreds of thousands of years, and Atlantis broke up in stages over a long period before the final destruction. Founding colonies in all parts of the globe. With them went their serpent symbolism, which has survived to this day in places like China. It was during the Atlantean Lemurian era that the same knowledge, stories, and symbolism were communicated all over the planet, and the royal bloodlines of the extraterrestrial races were seeded everywhere. This explains how, after the cataclysm, when European races discovered the Americas, Australia, and other apparently unconnected regions of the world, they found the people telling the same stories and following the same religions. The Atlantean and Lemurian initiates used their advanced techniques to build pyramids. The Thorax, Eos Kara, and Carians. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly. The sacred places of the ancients and Illuminati today were invariably the vortex points on the global energy grid. It was at these multi-line vortexes, like Stonehenge, that the Atlanteans and Lemurians built their temples, pyramids, and so on. The grid is geometrical, and the vortex points are in geometrical relationship to each other. Sedona in Arizona. Sedona is also associated by researchers of UFO activity with a reptilian underground base where members of the reptilian race work with their human or part human puppets in the Illuminati on the scientific and generic agenda. The Hopi tribe has Lemurian connections. A branch of the Atlanteans and Lemurians colonized the planet were called the Carians, the Eos Kara, and the Tuark. The Tuarks settled in North Africa. Again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing it. The Eos Kara became the Basque of Spain, and the Carians became the Phoenicians. It's like I always say, when you actually go back far enough, they're all connected. It's not surprising how different they are, but how much they're the same. I've said that for ages, said that for months now, possibly years. In honor of Votan, the Tuareg people of North Africa today, descendants of the Tuarks, have allowed some visitors to see their ancient cavern system in the Ahagar Mountains, where they have murals of their Atlantean ancestors holding snakes and swords with tridents on the blades. If I was offered that, I'd probably say no thanks. People invited into the underground temples of the Tuaregs claim to have seen green reptile monsters called orans, which the Tuaregs worship as the physical representation of their serpent goddess. The Tuaregs also perform a dance in honor of Votan. The Atlanteans and Lemurians established colonies in Egypt. This supports the stories of an Atlantean Lemurian colony in Egypt. Long before the cataclysm, this colony, Athenians went to war with Atlanteans before the deluge. Plato wrote of this war. Wherever the tribe of Dan, the Danans, wherever the reptilian bloodlines have located, the worship of a serpent goddess has always been the center of their rituals under names like Athene, Barati, Isis, Semiramis, El, Artemis, Diana, and Hecate. Other Atlantean Lemurian colonists were known as the Pelasgians, the peoples of the sea, the Danans, and the female Amazons. The Pelasgians worshipped the serpent moon goddess Dana, later Diana, Artemis, and the Atlantean goat god called Pan. They first landed on the Peloponnese in Greece and settled in Arcadia, according to ancient Greek records. Arcadia was apparently a name for Atlantis. The Danans left Atlantis to settle in Asia Minor, Greece, and the Aegean. They are claimed to descend from the tribe of Dan. The name Danans derived from their serpent moon goddess Diana. The Danans made the headquarters of their culture on the island of Rhodes. Branches of Atlanteans. Oh, sorry about that. The name of the Isle of Man in the Irish Sea, a place so important to the Druids, has the same origin, no doubt. The Taurus Mountains in Turkey, the Balearic Islands, and Sirius, were among other Danaan settlements, and they travelled from Atlantis to Britain, where they became known as Tuatha De Danann, or the people of the sea. The female Amazons were another branch of the Atlanteans and Lemurians, and myths say they came from a paradise called Hesperides, Atlantis. The Canaanites also descended from Atlantis, Lemuria. Mark Amaru Pinkham describes the migration of Atlanteans to Canaan in the return of the serpents of wisdom. One branch of these Atlantides were the Tyrrhenians, the people after whom the present Tyrrhenian Sea is named. The Tyrrhenians eventually split in half to become the Etruscans and the Carians or Phoenicians, a tribe which eventually migrated to Canaan. Advanced beings from a sunken continent. As these colonies and settlements were established, the serpent bloodlines from Atlantis and Lemuria were placed into the positions of ruling royal power, just as they had been before these continents sank. Just before each of the cataclysms, many Atlantean and Lemurian royal bloodlines fled to other parts of the world, heading mostly for high places to escape the impending flood. Atlanteans went to Britain, to Europe, Scandinavia, North Africa, the mountains of Turkey and Iraq, and the Americas. All along the American continent are the ancient legends and accounts of highly advanced beings from the sunken land in the Atlantic. On the western seaboard of the Americas and in Asia, they talk of similar advanced gods arriving from a sunken continent. Obsession with technology. Polynesians claim that survivors from this lost continent traveled to India before returning to the remnants of their homeland, the Pacific Islands, and becoming the Polynesians. These peoples also settled in Egypt via India. Chinese legend talks of a continent in the same area called, forgive me if I mispronounce this, Morigosima, which sank amid cataclysm, but its king, Pieru Un, escaped to mainland China and continued his bloodline there. This happened a number of times as Lemuria and Atlantis fell to cataclysmic events. The stage by stage destruction of Atlantis in the periods from 10,000 BC to 5,000 BC, their obsession with technology, so characteristic of Atlantis, can be seen in the world today. Well, it most certainly can, that is for sure. So thank you for joining me for part 6. That wraps up this part of the Mars, Atlantis, and the Hollow Earth presentations. We'll be moving on to part 7 fairly soon. And this evening I'm going to be recording with Jed and finishing off the Alexander the Great presentations. he was a little bit reluctant to do it, but I managed to talk him into it. Hopefully, if he doesn't cancel between now and 10:30, which is still about 3 hours away. um, you know, so yeah, join us for that. I'll put that up in the next couple of days. So I'll post 6.2 of Mars, Atlantis, and the Hollow Earth in the next few minutes, as of the time of recording. And then this evening, I've got Jed on for Alexander the Great Part 3. Then we'll finish off Mars, Atlantis, and the Hollow Earth. We've got 7 and 8 to go. So there's 2 more presentations. In reality, that means there's 4 more because they'll probably be split up into 2 parts. But thanks for watching and take care.